The Earth was on the brink of destruction. Alien forces had invaded and were wiping out everything in their path. Cities crumbled, and most of humanity had already fallen. But in the middle of the chaos, a small group of survivors stumbled upon something no one expected, a hidden empire beneath the surface of Earth. This empire wasn't new. It was ancient, built long before humanity had ever imagined it. Beneath the ground, deep in the forgotten parts of the planet, lay technology, far beyond anything humans had ever seen. In the darkness of this underground world, the group of survivors found themselves standing in awe. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was as if the future had come to life right in front of them. There was no explanation for it. How could an empire like this exist without anyone knowing? No one had ever mentioned it. No history book spoke of it. It was hidden, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. And now, with Earth on the edge of collapse, it was humanity's last hope. The survivors were a mix of soldiers, engineers, and scientists, all of them struggling to survive in a world that seemed to be ending. When they first found the entrance to the Empire, they thought it was just another underground shelter, a place to hide from the alien invaders. But what they found was something much more incredible. At first, the survivors didn't know what to make of it. The walls were covered in strange symbols and glowing lights, and the air inside was different, cleaner, more alive. It felt like they were walking into another world. As they explored, they began to uncover the remnants of a civilization far older than their own. There were machines unlike anything they had ever seen, weapons of unimaginable power, and technology that seemed almost magical. It didn't take long for them to realize that this was no ordinary empire. This was an ancient human civilization, built long before the aliens arrived. This empire had once ruled over many worlds, traveling from one planet to another, shaping entire galaxies. But somehow, this empire had been forgotten, hidden beneath Earth's surface, waiting for the right time to be rediscovered. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the empire, the survivors discovered something even more astonishing. The empire's weapons were still intact. Powerful ships capable of traveling across the stars were hidden in massive underground hangars. There were weapons designed to destroy entire fleets in a single shot, shields that could withstand the force of a planet's explosion, and advanced technology that would give humanity an edge in the war against the alien invaders. The group was both excited and terrified. On one hand, they had discovered a treasure trove of advanced technology that could change everything. But on the other hand, they knew that the aliens would soon realize that this power was now in human hands. The survivors had to decide what to do with this newfound power. They knew the aliens were getting closer. The war with the foreigners had already cost humanity everything. But now, with this hidden empire, they had a chance to fight back. The survivors couldn't waste any time. They had to act quickly or Earth would be lost forever. But there was one problem. No one knew how to use the Empire's technology. The machines, the ships, the weapons, they were all alien to humanity. They were advanced, yes, but also ancient. The survivors needed to learn how to use them, and they needed to do it fast. Time was running out. The group of survivors made a bold decision. They would try to unlock the secrets of the Empire, hoping to find the knowledge they needed to fight back. They would study the technology, piece by piece, and figure out how to make it work. But the pressure was on. Every minute counted. The aliens were closing in, and the fate of Earth rested in their hands. As they began to study the ancient empire's technology, they encountered many challenges. The machines were complex, and some were beyond their understanding. But the survivors were determined. They knew they had no other choice. The future of humanity depended on their success. As the first ship powered up, the survivors felt a surge of hope. They had taken their first step towards victory. But at the same time, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to face something much bigger than they had ever imagined. They were about to awaken an empire that had been dormant for centuries, and they weren't sure if they were ready for what was coming. Just as they were beginning to gain control over the technology, something strange happened. The ground trembled, and the air grew cold. It was as if the Empire itself was reacting to their presence. Was the Empire alive? Had it been waiting all this time for someone to unlock its power? The survivors had no answers, only questions, and they needed to find the answers before it was too late. The first few moments of their discovery were full of hope, excitement, and fear. The survivors had found a hidden empire that could change the fate of humanity, but they knew they couldn't stop there. The real battle was just beginning, and they had no idea what dangers lay ahead. As the survivors stepped deeper into the heart of the hidden empire, the air felt different, almost charged with a quiet power. The walls around them, ancient and covered in glowing symbols, seemed to pulse with energy, as though the very structure of this forgotten world was alive. The deeper they went, the more they realized that what they were walking through wasn't just a buried city, but a monument to something far greater than they had ever imagined. It was a civilization that had once stretched across the stars, now buried beneath Earth for reasons no one could explain. The survivors couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and fear. Every corner of this place revealed new wonders, advanced machinery that hummed with silent power, towering statues of beings who had once ruled over entire galaxies, and strange devices that defied understanding. The further they explored, the more questions arose. Why had such an incredible empire been hidden away? What had caused it to be abandoned? And most importantly, what dangers lay hidden within its ancient walls? One of the survivors, a young engineer named Sarah, was the first to find something truly remarkable. She had been studying a series of strange blueprints that seemed to map out the inner workings of a massive machine. A machine that, when activated, could reshape the very fabric of space. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a tool of unimaginable power. But the plans were incomplete. Missing pieces, broken circuits, and damaged components left them with more uncertainty than answers. Still, Sarah knew one thing for sure. If they could repair it, this machine could change the course of the war with the foreigners. The group, however, wasn't sure they could trust the machine. With no understanding of its true purpose or potential, they feared that activating it might come with consequences they couldn't predict. What if they unleashed something far worse than the foreign invaders? What if this ancient empire's technology was too powerful, even for humanity to control? Despite these fears, the survivors knew they had no choice. The aliens were closing, and Earth had been battered by their forces for far too long, and there was no time left to hesitate. As the survivors gathered to discuss their next steps, something unsettling happened. A sudden vibration echoed through the chamber, and the ground beneath them trembled. It was a strange sensation, like the entire underground empire was waking up from a long slumber. The survivors exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if this was a sign of the machine powering up or something else entirely. The feeling grew stronger with every passing moment. The group decided to activate the machine despite their uncertainty. But as Sarah began to work, another discovery left them even more unsettled. Deep within the heart of the empire, in a hidden vault, they found evidence of a terrible secret. The empire hadn't been abandoned voluntarily. It had been sealed off, locked away to keep something, or someone, trapped inside. The group realized that the empire's builders had faced their own enemies, and the technology they had left behind wasn't just for war. It was meant to imprison a force so dangerous that even the empire's greatest leaders had feared it. Who, or what, had the power to destroy an entire civilization? And why had this ancient empire, so advanced and mighty, been forced to create such a containment system? The survivors were now faced with a choice: activate the machine and risk everything in the hopes of gaining an advantage, or leave it alone, knowing the foreigners would soon wipe them out. Tension filled the air as they realized that every decision could either save or destroy them. Despite the fear, Sarah continued her work, her hands shaking as she placed the final piece of the machine into place. The room grew colder as the energy from the machine began to pulse, growing stronger with every passing second. Just as she pressed the final button, the ground shook violently, and a bright light erupted from the machine. The survivors held their breath, unsure if they had made the right choice. The light slowly faded and a low hum filled the room. The machine was active, but so was something else. The survivors stepped back as the walls around them began to shift, revealing another chamber, one that had been sealed for millennia. And within that chamber they saw it. A figure, frozen in time, bound by the very technology that had once made the Empire powerful. But now, with the machine activated, the figure began to stir. There they discovered a structure hidden in the darkness. The technology responded to their presence, illuminating slowly, as if awakening from a dream. Inside, they didn't find weapons. They found records, holograms of humans walking among alien species, blueprints of machines that could move entire cities, and logs warning of something called the Fold. The Fold, according to the records, was not an enemy. It was a boundary, a hidden force meant to keep dangerous knowledge locked away. If the wrong doors were opened, the Fold would expand and cover everything. This discovery shook them. The war with the foreigners was not just about survival anymore. It was about not repeating the mistakes of the past. Back at the command base, the being confirmed their fear. "You must use what you learn carefully," it said. "Too much, too quickly, and the Fold will respond. Even I cannot stop it." Now they faced a deeper problem. They had to gather the Empire's power to survive, but they had to do it without triggering a force that could erase everything. Sarah looked out at the others. "So we move carefully, vault by vault, step by step. We learn, we grow, and we protect what we find." And so the survivors prepared to search for the next vault, hidden somewhere in Earth's mountains. But what they didn't know was that someone else had already started searching too. Someone who didn't fear the Fold. Someone who wanted the Empire's power for a different reason. The race had truly begun. The mountain winds howled softly, brushing against the jagged cliffs as the team climbed higher. The thin air made every step harder, but they pressed on. Deep within the heart of this ancient range, hidden under layers of time and stone, was the next vault. The map they had found in the ocean vault had pointed here, an old place once sacred to a forgotten branch of humanity. But the vault wasn't the only thing waiting to be found. Sarah paused near a steep ledge, scanning the horizon with a device that now glowed with soft pulses of blue. The further they climbed, the stronger the pulses became, as if the vault could feel them coming. Behind her, Marcus kept checking their surroundings. Something didn't feel right. The air carried a strange hum, faint but constant, like a whisper just out of reach. Inside the base, the being monitored their progress, but even it seemed troubled. "There is something near the vault," it said through the communicator. "Something old, not made by humans or the Empire. Be careful." This warning added weight to every step. As they reached a narrow path carved by time itself, they found markings along the rock walls, symbols older than the ruins they'd seen before. Some were glowing faintly, reacting to their presence. Sarah touched one and suddenly saw a flash of images in her mind. Cities in the sky, beings made of energy, and a door that could open only once. The vault was close. They finally reached the entrance just as the sun dipped below the peaks, casting long shadows over the stone. The entrance was not a doorway, but a large circle etched into the mountain itself, completely still. Marcus approached it and held out the crystal they'd taken from the ocean vault. As soon as he did, the circle shimmered and slowly pulled back, revealing a long corridor filled with light. Inside, the walls were smooth, almost glass-like. Symbols floated in the air, shifting as they walked, like they were being read. The corridor opened into a wide chamber, where a strange structure stood in the center, half machine, half memory. It was not a weapon. It was a recorder. As they activated it, the room changed. The walls lit up, showing stars, planets, and lines of movement. A female figure appeared in light, an ancient leader of the Empire. Her message was calm, but urgent. "You, who find this," the figure began, "know this truth. The foreigners were not always outsiders. They were once allies, but when the Empire grew too powerful, it broke a promise, one that held the galaxy together. That promise was silence. Silence. About the fold. Sarah looked at the others, confused. What promise? The figure continued. The fold is not a place. It is a boundary, alive in its own way. It protects knowledge, but punishes greed. The Empire wanted to cross it. Others warned us not to. We didn't listen. The room dimmed. The map of the galaxy zoomed in on Earth. This planet, the figure said, was our last hope, a place to store what must never be found again. But if you are here, then the silence has been broken. They realized the truth. Humanity was not just a survivor of a forgotten empire. Earth had been chosen, hidden on purpose, not as a weapon, but as a vault itself. Suddenly, the structure in the middle of the room began to change. It formed a symbol in the air, a warning. Another vault had been activated, but not by them. The being's voice came through the communicator again. You need to return, now. Something else is moving. A signal was sent, and it's coming closer. Back at the base, strange readings filled the screens. A dark shape, not a ship, not a natural object, was moving toward the solar system. It moved not through space, but around it, as if skipping through shadows. Sarah turned to Marcus. We're not alone in this anymore. Someone, or something, is watching us unlock the past. And somewhere far away, deep in the galaxy, a second watcher opened its eyes for the first time in 1,000 years. It had waited patiently, silently for this moment. The fold was shifting, and Earth was no longer hidden. The team packed what they could and began the journey back, no longer just explorers of the past, but now protectors of a fragile future, where each discovery might bring light, or awaken something better left forgotten. The journey back from the mountain vault was quiet, but not peaceful. Every team member felt it. Something had changed. The world around them, once silent and still, now felt as if it were holding its breath. The air shimmered slightly. Devices flickered without reason. Even the stars above looked unfamiliar. Sarah reviewed the message from the vault again and again. The words of the ancient leader echoed in her mind. The silence has been broken. But it wasn't just about the fold anymore. They had triggered something else, something watching from beyond the edge of space. Back at the hidden base, the being waited, its glow dimmer than usual. When Sarah and Marcus arrived, it said something strange. You've done well. But now we must decide. Continue unlocking the past, or prepare for what's been awakened. Before anyone could answer, an alert spread across the base. A signal, deep and pulsing, was being picked up from Earth's orbit. But it wasn't coming from a ship. It was coming from a point in space that hadn't existed before. A rift had opened. Not a portal, not a doorway. A space between spaces. Thin and quiet, yet full of pressure, like the moment before a storm. From it came a sound none of the machines could record. But everyone heard it. A slow hum, almost like a voice trying to remember a forgotten song. The being stood still, its expression unreadable. This is older than the Empire, it whispered. It was never meant to wake. And then they understood. The fold wasn't just a boundary. It was a seal, a barrier placed by the first civilizations to protect reality itself from what lay behind it. Every time a vault was opened, a piece of that seal weakened. And now, something had noticed. Sarah gathered the group. We didn't just break silence, she said, and we lit a beacon. The base began to respond on its own. Lights activated, walls shifted, and old machinery hummed to life. It was preparing, not for defense, but for a message. A projection flickered on the main wall. This time it was not from the past, it was current. The image showed a distant world, not destroyed, but paused. No movement, no life. Frozen in a single moment. The fold had touched it. A warning, clearer than any words. Then the being spoke. If we continue, if we awaken all the vaults, we might gain the knowledge to defend this planet. Or, we might invite the fold in fully. There was silence in the room. Marcus finally said, "Then what's the other choice? Do nothing?" "No," Sarah replied. "We find another way. A path between waking the past and protecting the present." The team set out once more, but this time, they weren't just looking for vaults. They were looking for answers from those who had survived the Empire's fall. There were legends of one last sight, not a vault, but a mirror, a place where reality and memory met. If it existed, it might show them what the fold truly was, and how to stop it without repeating the Empire's mistakes. As they prepared for this journey, the being offered one final piece of guidance. Not everything lost should be found. But sometimes, the only way forward is through the echoes of what came before. The base doors opened, and the team stepped out once again into the unknown. Not as explorers, not as soldiers, but as guardians of a truth deeper than history. Far above them, beyond the edge of the stars, the rift remained open, watching, waiting, and listening. The silence was truly gone. It was clear now that the Empire hadn't just hidden away technology. It had hidden away a force that could either protect or destroy humanity. What the survivors had just awakened might be their salvation or their doom. They had opened a door to something much bigger than they had anticipated. Now, they would have to face the consequences of their actions. But one thing was certain. This discovery would change everything. The war with the foreigners was no longer their only battle. The real question now was whether humanity could control what they had just unleashed. With a mixture of excitement and dread, the survivors prepared to face whatever awaited them in the depths of the Empire. What they would find next could be the key to saving Earth, or the beginning of their ultimate destruction. The true war was about to begin. As the survivors stared at the figure that had just begun to stir within the hidden chamber, their hearts pounded in their chests. The ancient machine, now fully activated, hummed with a low, almost melodic sound, as if the very air around them was vibrating with a force they couldn't fully comprehend. It was a moment of wonder and terror. They had unlocked something that had been sealed away for eons, and now they had no idea what the consequences would be. The figure in the chamber was unlike anything they had seen before. It was humanoid in shape, but its features were different, otherworldly. It had an aura of immense power, yet it seemed fragile, trapped within the confines of the containment technology. The survivors couldn't even tell if it was alive. It looked as though it had been frozen in time, its form caught in a moment long past. But now, with the machine activated, it was beginning to awaken. The question was, why had this being been imprisoned? And why now? Sarah, the engineer who had activated the machine, stepped forward cautiously. Her mind raced with questions. She had studied countless pieces of the Empire's technology, but this was unlike anything she had encountered. She was fascinated yet terrified. What had they awakened, and could they control it? The silence in the chamber was deafening. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the machine as it powered up, growing stronger with every passing second. The figure's eyes flickered open, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. The survivors froze, unsure of what to do next. It was clear that whatever this being was, it wasn't human. It was something more, a remnant of an ancient empire that had once ruled across galaxies. Then, to their shock, the being spoke. Its voice was deep, resonant, and ancient, like the echoes of forgotten stars. "Why have you awakened me?" it asked, its words sending a chill through the survivors. There was no hostility in its voice, but there was an unmistakable power, a power that could either save them or doom them all. The group exchanged uneasy glances. They had no answers, no explanation. They had simply stumbled upon this forgotten empire, desperate for a chance to fight back against the alien invaders. But now they realized that their actions had consequences far beyond their understanding. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They had awoken something that could either help them win or lead to their downfall. One of the survivors, an experienced soldier named Marcus, took a step forward. "We need your help," he said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "The foreigners are here. They've invaded our world and we're losing. We found your technology, and we believe it could help us fight back. But we don't know how to use it, or what this machine really does." The being studied them for a moment, its glowing eyes scanning each of them as if weighing their worth. Then it nodded slowly. "I see," it said, its voice carrying a note of regret. "You have found what was meant to remain hidden. But what you have awakened is not simply a weapon. It is a force, a catalyst, capable of reshaping the fate of your world. But it comes at a price." A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. "What price?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The being's gaze turned solemn. "The power you seek is not meant for those who do not understand its true nature. It requires knowledge that has been lost over millennia. It demands not only the mastery of the technology, but the understanding of the consequences of using it. If you use it without fully comprehending its potential, it could destroy everything." The survivors stood in silence, the weight of the being's words sinking in. They had known the risks of activating the technology, but this was something different. It wasn't just about winning the war, it was about understanding what they were dealing with and whether they had the wisdom to control it. They had awakened a force far greater than they had anticipated, and now they had to decide if they were willing to pay the price. But time was running out. The foreigners were still closing in, and Earth was on the brink of total destruction. The survivors had no choice but to move forward, even though they didn't fully understand what they had just unleashed. They needed the power, but could they wield it without causing more harm than good? As the being continued to speak, it shared fragments of ancient knowledge, pieces of the puzzle that the survivors would need to understand if they were to control the technology and use it to their advantage. It was clear that they would need to learn fast. The machine was the key to their survival, but it was also a double-edged sword. It could give them the power to fight back, but it could also bring about their downfall. The survivors knew they had to take the risk. The fate of humanity rested in their hands, and they couldn't afford to hesitate. They would follow the being's guidance, piece together the fragments of knowledge, and unlock the true potential of the Empire's power. But they also knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges and dangers they couldn't yet foresee. As they began to study the ancient knowledge, they realized that they weren't just preparing for a war against the foreigners. They were about to embark on a journey into the unknown, a journey that would take them beyond the limits of human understanding and challenge everything they thought they knew about the universe. The stakes were higher than ever, and the survivors couldn't help but wonder, what would the cost of victory be? The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and with it, the discovery of a power that could either save humanity or end it all. The survivors had no choice but to move forward, hoping they could control the very force they had awakened. The fate of Earth was in their hands, and they were running out of time. The skies above Earth had grown strange. Patterns of light flickered at night where stars once shone calmly. The survivors, now gathered under the guidance of the awakened being, looked up with quiet fear. The being, who had started to regain fragments of its lost memory, warned them that the changes they saw were not natural. Something was watching, something far beyond the stars. Inside the underground command chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Sarah, Marcus, and the others sat around a large table made of a smooth silver material they had once thought decorative, until it began displaying star maps on its own. The Empire's technology seemed to respond to their presence more easily now, as if accepting them slowly. But there were signs, signals from deep space, warnings in the language of the ancient empire, that time was running out. The outsiders. They have noticed the awakening, the being said quietly. Your planet is no longer hidden. Everyone fell silent. The being had only recently begun to share small pieces of information about what it truly was. A guardian, created long ago by a forgotten empire to protect the galaxy's balance. That empire had grown too ambitious, and the Guardians were sealed away when things began to fall apart. Now, with Earth using its forgotten systems, those who once feared the Empire were beginning to take notice again. But there was something else. The knowledge you need to fully awaken the defense systems is scattered, the being explained. It was hidden across the stars, stored in vaults known only to a few. If you are to survive, you must unlock them. Marcus leaned forward. Then we need to find them, whatever it takes. The being nodded, but there was uncertainty in its glowing eyes. Traveling to them will not be easy. Your world does not yet have the means. But the keys to unlocking those vaults, they might already be on this planet, buried deep beneath the ruins of your own past. That sentence left them stunned. What do you mean? Our past? Sarah asked. Long ago, the being began. Humans were not as disconnected from the stars as they are now. Your species was once guided, uplifted by an ancient alliance. But when the Empire fell, your world was cut off, for its protection. You forgot everything. But the traces still remain. It was almost impossible to believe, yet the evidence was all around them. Ancient ruins that didn't match modern history, strange signals beneath deserts, and machines hidden beneath ice caps. The survivors, now acting as leaders of the resistance, divided into groups. Their mission: find these vaults, recover the knowledge, and understand what the Empire truly left behind. The first vault was located under the oceans. They found clues in an old satellite station, scratched into a wall by someone long dead. It was a sequence of symbols, clearly not written by a human hand, yet strangely familiar. Sarah spent days decoding it, and when she finally did, it led them to a point deep beneath the sea.